Hey, afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining today. My name is Thomas Reardon, partner business manager here at Kount. Again, really trying to either highlight the unique use case that we're solving with partners or with partners like VAI, spread awareness of the impact of fraud and that there's an easy solution with their pre-built integration with Kount. So we're going to talk about Kount and highlight the solution. But before we do, I always like to give a short and brief, quick history lesson on how we came to be, because I think it adds a lot of validity to the solution and showcases that we were really founded out of necessity more so than just a want. And so originally founded in 2007, but what we've been doing in the history of the data collection we've been doing has been going back since the early 90s. And it started with a man named Dr. Tim Barber and a sister company of ours that's still around today. It's an affiliate marketplace called ClickBank. So in the early 90s, ClickBank was experiencing a ton of fraud, and Tim Barber decided to code align a JavaScript called the DDC, which is called our device data collector. And that allowed him to fingerprint devices and therefore confirm online identities. So became super effective for his own business. At this point now, he's somewhere on an island enjoying life, but we're still using his software, and hence the 2007 start date. So then we fast forward to February of 2021, where we were acquired by Equifax. And this makes a lot of sense for us because when you think about Equifax, they're more the physical identity of who someone is. So how many kids do they have, their marital status, where they live, occupation, salary. But then Kount, on the other hand, is the total opposite, where we're more the digital identity of who someone really is. So it's going to be how many devices are associated with their name, what's their IP address, what's the time zone, how many cards are associated with those devices. And so you get this full, complete picture of this one-headed monster of all this information and really understand who someone is if it's someone you want to do business with or not. And then we're going to fast forward 1 year later or 2 years later to earlier this year, we acquired Mitigator. Another exciting milestone for us because we wanted to protect the entire customer journey all the way from account opening to chargeback representment. And so we had the evidence to fight the chargebacks, but we were relying on the clients to fight the chargebacks on their behalf. And we just didn't really like that. And if you've ever experienced these card networks, they all have different rules and timeframes where if you don't respond quickly enough that you accept guilt, and it's just a headache and a mess to deal with. So acquiring Mitigator, they do the representment piece for us that we'll dive into that a little bit later on. So here are some of our network partners and e-marketplaces, and this is really just to highlight how vast and how diverse our network really is. On the previous slide, we see about 56 billion annual transactions. And the point being is that it's going to be super rare if someone comes to your website and they haven't gone through one of these platforms before or haven't gone through one of our partners before. And therefore, we have a profile on them and know if it's someone you want to do business with or not. Should I accept this online transaction? Do they have 20 chargebacks associated with their name? Yes or no? Those are the kind of information that our AI network, called our Identity Trust Global Network, focuses on, does networking analysis to provide you the decisioning in real time. So here's the type of data that we're collecting when they go through the payment page. So we get payments data, payment type, token, bank name, country, all the way to location data. So that's going to be your physical location, the billing address, the shipping address. This becomes semi-important when you're dealing with, hey, if my billing address is from Illinois going to Colorado, it's next day shipping, but all of a sudden it came from an IP address somewhere in the UK, right? Those don't match up, and that's why that's important to us. Then we go to digital identifier data. So the device ID, that DDC we talked about, device type, IP address, and then finally, unique customer data. So that's going to be user-defined fields, or better known as like a coupon code or a loyalty number. Super helpful in defining or associating if that's a good person or not, because usually that one coupon code relates to one individual only. So again, a great way to identify someone and know if they're a trustworthy person to do business with or not. So we have all this data, but how are we organizing it? How are we using it in a way that's useful for the merchants? So with our Identity Trust Global Network, we use two types of machine learning called unsupervised and then supervised. And so unsupervised is going to replicate like a fraud analysis instinct. It's going to be doing that networking effect where it leaves a bread trail of where this person has been before and the kind of negative or positive history associated with them in real time, faster than you can blink your eye. But that's also powered by our supervised machine learning. And so the supervised machine learning is going to be engineered from historical data. It'll take a subset of 3, 6, 9 months of your data and start to understand what's normal for your business and therefore detecting anomalies. The issue with only using just one or the other, especially with supervised, and I think supervised is a lot more common these days, but it's going to take 3 to 6 months or even 9 months for it to become super effective for yourself. So pairing it with super unsupervised machine learning gives that analysis right away that, hey, this is someone we can trust, and then later on to detect those anomalies. And so those pair together to produce an Omni score, which is a safety rating from 0 to 99, with 99 being the safest. And so what you can do with this score is pretty much set a threshold for the risk you're willing to take on. So let's say everything that comes out is a 60 Omni score, I'm just going to decline, and everything 61 and above, I'm going to approve. You can do that. If you want to say, hey, I want to do some manual reviews, anything that's 60 and below, to still decline it. But if it's 61 through 69, let me review it. And then anything 70 and above, let it go on through. Those are things you can change and automate. And what's even cooler is that you're able to change and adjust the Omni score behind the scenes and say, hey, well, if I moved it from a decline from 65 all the way to 70, how many more transactions would I see? Or how much more fraud would I take on, right? You can keep your rules as is, change those rules in the back end, and then learn and see if it's worth the investment of changing those rules on your behalf. So how does this platform work, right? So they obviously come to your page, the interaction happens with the pre-built integration with VAI. It'll go through our adaptive machine learning that we just talked about, the AI or the supervised and unsupervised. It'll spit out that Omni score with a 98, you're definitely passing, but it's then going to go through those business policies that we just talked about and how you can approve and decline and adjust those at your will. And then finally, the decision happens. And what's interesting about the decision is that if you are getting a lot of declines, you can go into our AWC, also known as our Agent Web Console, and access Data Mart. And so that's going to give you specific details on why the transaction was declined, what reason codes were not met for it to be going through. So if you're seeing fraud, like let's say from a certain country or a certain area code or someone's email address, right? You can adjust rules and create rules around those to even enhance the system to fit your business needs and policies. Because obviously, one box doesn't fit all. Everyone's in different industries. They're seeing different types of fraud. How do we handle it? We want to leave that up to the merchants to really fine tune, but at the same time, we provide rules into over 250 models up front that are going to help you get on the right track. So back to talking about the entire customer journey and what Kount can do as far as chargebacks and increasing acceptance rates. So let's say we have an account creation, we can protect there, no problem. We have the fraud detection, no problem. The orders process, but then we get the dispute. Someone calls their bank and say, hey, I never made this purchase. But with order validation, we take a screenshot of all the information that we took at the time of purchase and provide it to that bank teller. So the bank teller can say, hey, John, you say you didn't buy this, but it actually came from your Android device. It showed that the CVV was punched in. It was at this location, this address. It was a subscription. Are you sure you want to go through with this chargeback? And about 50 to 60% of the time, if it truly is fraud, they're going to hang up. Let's say it's friendly fraud, which would be, hey, I made a purchase on my mom's credit card and she didn't know it. So it's her son, right? There can be rules or policies in place to automatically refund those, or if it's a subscription, let's say, and they didn't know that if they didn't cancel it in 7 days, it renewed. We can have prevention alerts, which are specific rules for your business to refund that merchant or that customer before it actually hits your chargeback rate. And then step 7 is actually when the acquirer is actually refunded. Now, let's say they skip that part, right? They don't want to do steps 5 through 7, and they're actually going to go through with the chargeback. That is when we provide the evidence from steps 1 and 2 to the folks over at Mitigator, now with Kount, at step number 9. And so then they'll take that information and go fight it on your behalf if we can't knock it off in the first place. So hopefully that made sense. We're going to go through it just briefly real quick again. So the deflections, that's going to be the information we provide the bank teller in real time so that they can try and deflect it with no issues whatsoever. Previously, This is the type of information that banks were being able to look at, right? So all it has is transactions ID, the retrieval number. We know how much it was spent, the date. We don't know what was bought. We just know the website. There's not too much information about, there's no email. So with Kount, with all the data that we're collecting, a more vivid view, right? So now we do have the email. We have the last four numbers of the card number. We see that it was purchased on an Android device and that the CVV was punched in. So that's the difference between using Kount and just regular like providers out there that aren't providing in-depth analysis so that you can actually pinpoint and with certainty prove that it was that person who purchased it. At the same time, for custom rules, if it is like the prevention alerts, you could say, hey, we do subscriptions, right? And they end in 7 days. And if there's any issues with that, call this number. Or for any customer service issues, fraud issues, anything like that, call this number, email this email. So those are things you can put ahead of time so that you don't get hit with a chargeback, right? Because we want to keep that chargeback rate as low as possible. Prevention alerts, again, we just went over those. The rules that you have in place so that the bank automatically refunds them without getting hit by a chargeback. And then one last slide, just showing the flow. Customer calls in, hopefully with those 5 through 7 pieces of information that we have, it is deflected and the chargeback is not hitting you, but the merchant is refunded. If not, and they do want to fight it, we have all the evidence right there, and then that's when it goes over to mitigator. So what are the benefits overall? Obviously, with VAI, doing the integration, dev resources and time, they're valuable. So right then and there, it's lower cost. It's going to be minimal resources and time to value simply because we can move as fast as the merchant can, but at the same time, doing a 3-week sprint isn't always feasible, or doing a 4-week sprint isn't always feasible. We can move as fast as the merchant wants, but given the fact that we have the integration set up, it'll take less than a week if we just need to do 2 trainings and some minor configuration to get you guys up and running.